Latifa is going to be the main individual that is going to lead this session. She'll be the one to ask questions. And from here on, if you have any question, like as we go on, you can leave them in the chat and we'll get back to them in the discussion part of the session. Now, the first guest panelist is Bianca Wells. Bianca, you can go and please introduce yourself. And I just have to say, Bianca is very talented. She's been running the WordPress community for some time now, probably over how much years? 5 years, I believe.
The community itself, only 3.
On 3? Oh, it felt longer than that.
No.
Okay. And it's the WordPress community has been pretty helpful to its member. There's a lot of content that they shared, not just in development, but as well as like content based. But I'll leave Bianca to introduce herself and give more about so tell a bit about you and how you got started in tech.
Sure, no problem. Good evening, everybody. The first thing I'm going to address is on that slide, I get described as a Jamaican full stack developer, and I have not been a developer in years at this point. But that is actually how I got my start. I studied computer science at UE, and I worked as a developer for several years before moving into less immediate tech focus. And I moved more into project management, which I have now been doing roughly since about 2012. Still tech adjacent in many ways, and I've sort of moved in and out of the tech space. Over the last 5 years, I moved into the entrepreneurship and innovation space, working with tech startups first. And then the last 3 years, I've been working in corporate innovation for the Victoria Mutual Group as their manager for digital innovation. And on the side, outside of my day job, I still remain very involved with the tech community in a few different ways. Most recently, I have been the lead for the Kingston WordPress meetup group. I was also one of the local directors for the Founder Institute Jamaica, which was a startup accelerator program, which we've been on hiatus. We're actually looking to see if we're going to bring that back this year. And that is really a very, very quick summary of my journey in tech. And you're going to hear a lot more about some of the pieces of that journey as we get into the questions, because I have, in fact, when I started thinking about it, I have been working remotely on and off since 2012. Yeah, so in different capacities and consistently for the last year and a half, so pre-pandemic. But I will hand back over to our moderator.
Okay, so we can now, thank you, Bianca. So we'll now move to Joedian. Could you please tell us a bit about yourself, how you got started in tech and what you're currently doing?
Sorry, I muted myself earlier. Right, so I'm also a graduate of UA, graduated in 2007, was it? So since that time, I've been in tech. I started out doing Drupal development. Yeah, yes, Rohan. Drupal development for a company in the Technology Innovation Center by UTech. And then I started working for GOJ for 7 years. During that time, I did a couple of freelance work. Back then we had like Elance, Guru, etc. So I did a couple freelance jobs, mostly in PHP, though I would say I'm definitely a Java developer. But PHP is so quick and easy. So I've done a couple implementations for clients. And the freelance scale as far as New Zealand, etc. during that time. I also was relocated, and I like to say was relocated because when I was working in Jamaica, I was contacted about an opportunity to work in Costa Rica. And I went through the interview process, and me and my entire family was relocated to Costa Rica, where I lived for almost 6 years as a permanent
Wow.
resident, doing development for a top US bank, plus working for Intel. In my current capacity as jump conscious again, I am no longer a developer. I'm currently a TPM at American Express. So as we go through today, I'm definitely open to questions on remote work, how to get started. Not sure if I'm fully in tune to what the market is like now, but I'll answer as best as I can per my experience. And also working for such a big company, you'd say, and how we manage the pivot and what are our expectations. I kind of peeped at the questions initially, and someone, I'm seeing your WhatsApp and everything, just so you know, you're sharing your entire screen. Don't think you want to share all of that. So yeah, so how we manage people while we're working from home, and some best tips, etc., for working from home and getting the most value from the people you are working with, and also being able to provide value as a remote worker and showing how valuable you are while working from home. And that's, I'm also the founder of Crack the Stack. It's well, a company I started when I was in Costa Rica, because I also started a women in tech group while there, because I found that there are many barriers to women wanting to be in tech. It's a male dominated field, etc. Many women weren't inclined to enter, so I started doing women in tech, leading groups, doing a lot of talks, sessions, conferences, what have you. And then it led to me finding Crack the Stack, which I have not worked on in a while, but I still do give advice in terms of interview prep, resume preparation, etc., for women or anyone in general who want to break into tech or just want to revamp or look at a different option in tech. And that's it.
Thank you, Joedian. I think since our career in tech sessions are geared towards career developments, maybe we can send some persons over to Crack the Stack, because I know there are a lot of students, well, particularly students, but a lot of digital professionals that are confused and would love the help to kind of find and focus on their niche areas and learn how to put themselves out there.
Yep.
So we can touch on more of that later in the session. We're going to move on to Rohan now. Rohan, could you share with us a little about yourself, about knowledge as well, and how you got started?
Hello everyone, I'm Rohan Smith and I'm a software developer. I've been in software development since a long time. I went to UE. I did computer science and electronics as my undergrad. And then I graduated same class as Jody in 2007. And from 2007 onwards, I started a web development company because I learned Drupal, and it was hot those days, like really hot. And I started building websites with Drupal while attending university at West Indies. So they were pretty much paying me to work on my company while I was doing a master's under the cover. Right, so I ended up working as a Drupal developer, building websites for a lot of companies in Jamaica. I did that for a couple of years, till about 2012. Still didn't finish my master's at UA because I was distracted by work. And I met this beautiful young lady. She went to UTech. She was from Trinidad and Tobago. And we fell in love, but she had to go back to Tobago, and I was in Jamaica. And I was like, how am I gonna ever stay with the love of my life, right? So I decided to start looking for work where I could work in Trinidad and Tobago, where she's from, while still having a salary to take care of my wife and stuff. So I went online and I started to search, and I found opportunities to do remote work. And funny enough, they accepted me to work. and I've been working remote since around 2013. I started in Jamaica, but I've been in Tobago since 2013. So that's about 8 years. Yeah, and I've been working remotely pretty much 7 out of that 8 years here. I've worked primarily for companies in the US, doing primary Drupal development, some PHP, JavaScript, etc. But yeah, I've been working remotely. I've worked for a lot of big companies, like a lot of top universities, Stanford, Duke, UCLA. I've worked for companies like TripAdvisor. Well, not directly as an employee, but like as a subcontractor. I work for those projects. So I worked as a subcontractor for agencies in the US, working as a developer for different projects across the years. I'm currently still a bit freelancing a bit, but my main focus now is on my startup, which is called Knowledge. It's knowledge as in Jamaican NALI, knowledge and understanding, right? So it's the idea is, you know, the internet is becoming huge. There are tons of articles being written every day. Things like podcasts are getting popular, audiobooks, and even recently we have Clubhouse, the new audio app. So my intention is to be able to join these list of audio startups with knowledge by allowing you, the user, to download knowledge into your brain by narrating text articles and creating a library of text articles across the internet. So anyone can just randomly go and, just as you go and read a blog or you bring up the Gleaner, you'll be able to go and get a list of audio articles for your favorite blog or newspaper. And you're able to listen to a playlist of articles throughout your day. So that's the project I'm working on now. I still freelance part-time, so I can feed the kids, but that's the primary thing I do right now. I guess that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Rohan. That's quite a bit of experience there. I think we're all excited to see where knowledge goes. And when I looked at the word first, I had no idea that it had anything to do with the Jamaican power word. So that's quite interesting. And of course, Bianca says Rohan is building this opening, so you should definitely follow him online for into the process of knowledge coming to life. Thank you for that, Bianca. So let's dive right into our discussion segment. The first thing we want to look at is the experience of remote work and what misconceptions may remain now that we're a part of the pandemic and we're being forced to work online. So many persons have just jumped online, but they don't really understand what the real vision for remote work is supposed to be. So for each of our panelists, I want to know what your experience has been like working remotely, both before and during the pandemic, and how has it changed since the onset of COVID-19? Any one of you can start.
All right,
first.
I will jump in. So as I mentioned, I actually have done remote work on and off since 2012. My first experience back then, I was employed to a company that was based in Florida, and I was their only employee in Jamaica at the time. That was interesting just because I'd never done it before. And when we get into talking about some of the things that you need to make working remotely successful, we can talk some more about that. But it was an arrangement that worked fairly well for about a year and a half. And then I actually left that position to do some other things. I have more recently When I started working with tech startups, I was doing a World Bank project, which was a regional Caribbean project. And I was managing a remote team. So I actually had partners in this project who were located in various islands across the Caribbean, and the startups we were working with were all across the Caribbean. So there was quite a bit of remote involvement. So my team didn't necessarily have to have a physical location. We eventually did, but there was a lot of remote work involved there, just coordinating activities and interacting with partners and stakeholders across the region. And then my current situation, I am full-time employed to the Victoria Mutual Group, so local corporate entity. And I've been working there for 3 years. I've been remote for the last year and a half, which takes us to before the pandemic. So in my case, I actually had a health issue. I had a broken leg, very badly broken, with many complications and many surgeries. So I'm not sure why O'Shane is doing that with his eyebrows. But so I actually started working remotely in September of 2019 because I was still very much on bed rest and then eventually on crutches, and the office was just not feasible. And then the pandemic hit. So for me personally, the pandemic didn't change anything because I was already remote for about 6 months before cases showed up here. What it did change though is that prior to the pandemic, I was a distinct minority. There were very few other people I was working with who were working remotely. And then March 2020 came along, and all of a sudden, like half of the company was now remote. My team was entirely remote. The organization had to shift gears completely. One of my coworkers actually just joined not too long ago. Now, in our case, we were actually already fairly well set up for remote work in that we had policies in place. We had the tools and technologies, to facilitate it. So it was not as difficult a shift for us as it was for several other companies in Jamaica. But the biggest difference is the nature of the interactions. So when you are 100% in office, everybody's in office, the expectation is that everybody's in office. Interactions take a particular form because the expectation is I'm going to see you in the office. I'm going to see you across the table at a meeting. I'm going to sit and chat with my coworkers at the lunch table. I'm going to run into you in the stairwell between meetings and I can just ask you a question. So those kinds of interactions are now very different when people are remote because you have to be far more intentional about your communication. It's not about just running into somebody in a passage because you're not in a passage. You have to actually send somebody a message or an email or call them. You're not as likely. There are now some tools that are coming out to try and recreate the spontaneous interactions of an office. But that for me has been the biggest change because it impacts how you bring team members on board, which I know we're going to talk about for people just getting started. It impacts how you build relationships with your coworkers. It impacts the way that you communicate because you have to be very precise. If everything's in writing, there's no long expounding on things to try and get your point across. So for me, that has been what I've seen as the biggest change with the forced shift to remote with the pandemic.
Okay, thanks, Bianca. Joedian, Rohan.
Yeah, I'm gonna add, let me hope I'm not on mute again. Speaking from being an employee perspective as Bianca did. So I would say my first double remote work was when I was in eGov, and I think I see a former coworker online. And we were able to connect to the VPN with your own personal machines to kind of finish up something on the evening. And I remember there was a scenario where I needed to fast for 3 days. So I had to be home. I tried driving to work and I said I couldn't do it. And because we had some kind of, access to the VPN, you could log in, you had that Cisco phone thing, I could actually work from home for the 3 days. In terms of the difference, I find that back then, even though it was offered as a one-off thing because the infrastructure was there, it was still seen as a no-no by many managers or many persons. There's this need to micromanage sometimes, or the thought that if you're home, it means that you're watching TV instead of working, etc. And it just wasn't that widely accepted back then, right? Even though some companies had that facility, and that is way back in 2013, etc. They were just not, promoting it as a way of working. There were people driving in from St. Mary to come to work every morning, and Spanish Town every day to come to work. Honestly, I'd rather drive from St. Mary. People were coming from crazy places to come into work because it wasn't accepted that people are going to be performing at the same level. Advanced to 7-8 years later in 2020, I found that a lot of companies, they had the technology. They were a little bit more advanced in terms of having laptops available for people to take home, versus having all desktops way back then. And I think the mindset also changed. I'm not sure if it's the TikTok generation, I'm not sure what it is, but I do find that people are cognizant of the fact that people can still work with all these distractions around. And I have found that people are also, I'm not sure if it's a pandemic, but people are genuinely concerned that you have a work-life balance, that you're taking your lunchtime, and they're actually telling you to take your lunchtime now versus way back then. They're trying to see, oh, let me ping this person, see if they're online, because if they're not online, then they're not working, right? So I think a big mindset shift happened along with that technology bit that has truly facilitated us to be able to work and work more productive. From my team, there's no drop in productivity. In fact, I can say that there are some instances where I'm telling people, why did you do that at 7 p.m. at night? Don't do it again. In some cases, people are even bored and they're being more productive than before. So that's what I have seen personally, and personally, an opportunity to save money by not commuting, because I used to pay a lot of money to commute, and I've seen a lot of savings in that front as well. So for me, I'm just saying, it's all positives. And as we go into different questions, we can speak about different nuances about, back then, what it is now, and, how we cope as we work remotely.
Right. So for me, I said I've been remote pretty much for the past 8 years. And it was kind of ironic because, right, so it was November 2019, I'd taken a kind of sabbatical because with the types of projects I work on, it's typically long-term projects, say a year, 2 years or so on. And I mostly do contract work. So you don't really get leave with the paper or, right? So you don't really get like leave. If you take a day, you don't get paid for that day. But it pays really good, so it's fine. So what I decided to do was that last November, I said I'm going to take a sabbatical. After my last project, I stopped working mid-November, December, January, around February, going into March. I was like, okay, let me just start looking for some more work. And as I was about to head back into the market to work, to do more contract work, then the pandemic hit. And it seems like all the job boards dried up. Like everywhere that I've never been out of work for probably more than 3 months max before. But like everywhere dried up. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And even when things start to appear, they're saying remote, but US only. You have to be a resident of the US. I'm like, okay, this Trump thing getting serious too, right? So it was a kind of a shocker for me for a little bit, but well, good enough that I had a bit of saving before, so I said, okay, so what I'll do, there are a bit of projects I had that I want to work on for a while, so let me start working on these projects. So I started doing a little side projects here and there, and I started focusing more on my personal projects and things that I've wanted to work on for a while. And I've been doing a lot of those, and to the point where I started saying, hey, I should actually just keep doing this, right? Um, However, I still get the contracts here and there from people who know me, and work on the side. So pretty much it had kind of dried up. I'm seeing it coming back now a bit. I went and looked recently, and a lot more jobs that are opening up. I think the economy kind of came back too. So the opportunities are blossoming for this time. So I think COVID had a little dip in the opportunities, but it's coming back.
Awesome.
And if
I know that at UE, the internship program had that issue too as well when the pandemic hit. A lot of companies that would have offered student internships are no longer offering internships, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are working remotely and they usually require interns to come in on site. So essentially, we're saying that the pros are outweighing the cons. Persons are more aware of work-life balance, and even though we aren't able to communicate, or it's harder to have those spontaneous communication, we still have a lot more pros in terms of cost effectiveness and the opportunity to be more flexible for remote work. So if we look at the team dynamics, how would you say that you've managed team dynamics remotely? So some persons may know how to manage their time, but in terms of managing working with a team, at the last meetup, we spoke about employees and vertical communication. So employers were concerned with employees being able to communicate up. But one thing that we wanted to address was horizontal communication in terms of how team members are communicating with each other and how that dynamic is being managed remotely.
I can start this one. So I am a TPM / Scrum Master. I would say my day-to-day is way more for Scrum Master than a TPM, though that's my official role. So I would say in terms of me and my team, it's pretty flat, right? No one is higher than anyone in terms of accountability and how we report out. So what I found is that I met my team 2 months in January. So I started at that company in January, and then, we were in office, and then in March, it was like full lockdown, right? We were supposed to go back June. Okay. Then they said after Labor Day. Okay. And then they said after December. Okay. Now we're here in September this year. So next month would have officially been work from home in pandemic for 1 year. And then really after that, we don't know when we're going to go back into the office. So in terms of communication and handling that vertically, you and your teammates, I think if you never had a good rapport, you never had any trust with your teammates before you went off, or, let's say you never met them before, it could have been challenging. But I would say this is a great opportunity for you to build that rapport with persons. You're not necessarily meeting them in the hallway, as Bianca said. You're not necessarily going to buy a patty down and Ligani with them, or run into KFC, or whatever it is you do to kind of build that relationship. So now you have to be a bit more actively invested in building that relationship. What does that mean? It means pinging people, sometimes send them a meme, an appropriate meme if you think they're interested in that kind of thing. It may mean telling a joke when you're waiting on a meeting to start. It means caring about what the other person is doing. It means when I bring my cat before he died to the meeting, speaking about other person's pet, asking their names. It means being actively interested in other people's lives, not fasting on people's life. That's not what I mean, right? I mean, being actively vested. Why? Because if you don't have a good relationship with people, it's really, really hard to get anything done. You need buy-in, and a lot of buy-in from people now, especially to get things done. So the first part of that is definitely building that relationship and ensuring that you're on the same tone. Additionally, as we're in this, you know, virtual age, we're typing a lot more, right? So we're using Slack. And when we don't know our coworkers, we tend to read what they write in a way that may not be how they mean it, right? So you don't know their intonations, the way they relate, the way they tell jokes, and they may send something like, the report is due, and you think it's something aggressive, or you think, you know, they're complaining, etc. When if you had that rapport with them, you're able to go and say, hey, I instead of taking it the bad way. So for me, that is just super, super important. I have so many activities I now do before my stand-ups and before my retrospectives, etc., because I found that that's just the most important part of building that and having that communication.
Yeah, and I would echo a lot of what Joedian said. It really is about actively investing in building those relationships. Um, in my case, so I have both the vertical, because I have a team that I manage, but then of course I also have my peers. Um, One of the things she mentioned in terms of showing an active interest. So I almost always will jump into meetings a few minutes early and chatting with whoever is in the online room, checking in on them. How's their family? How are they managing with COVID? What else has been happening with them outside of work? The other thing, and I do that with my team as well. And the other thing, depending on the organization that you're a part of, is they may have taken the opportunity, as many organizations have, to create social engagements in our online virtual space, right? So Victoria Mutual in particular, we have, ever since last year, we have been having virtual limes, virtual parties, virtual awards ceremonies. Something is happening at least every quarter, if not more often. This month, it's late for this month. It may be happening next month. They have a culture yard that's happening that's going to focus on arts and culture. And so taking part in those activities is a good way to also kind of build that rapport, because then people are getting to see you and talk to you and communicate with you outside of that work context, right? I have a virtual games lime I'm going to attend on Friday. So being a part of that is also part of how you build that rapport. Even in the pre-remote time, sometimes people didn't want to socialize, work finished at a certain time, they're done, they want to go home, they want to go about their business. It's even more important now in this virtual space that you engage in these activities, because that is going to be part of how you get to know people, right? You may only have a few minutes in a meeting or between meetings. Sometimes you ping people in the day and they're busy, they don't have time to chat. When you're in a social event, just like you would in person, that's the time when people are letting down their hair a little bit, they're a little more relaxed. You meet people from who you wouldn't necessarily end up in a meeting with, for example, because you just don't work in the same area. But yeah, we were liming, it's a virtual lime, but we were liming at the party last month. So I know who she is. I know what her living room looks like. I saw her dancing on screen. So stuff like that definitely factors into building those relationships.
Yeah, and use lots of emojis, especially when communicating. Just to ensure you communicate the right tone. Emojis like work really, really well, and GIFs, right? For me, I've had to work with very, very diverse teams. Other times, like I've been a team where one person is in Costa Rica and the next person is in England and the next person in Spain. So there is diverse cultures. So that you have to find kind of grounds where everyone can relate. So generally, when you're working you'd probably work on Slack or one of those chat rooms. You'd have like a chat room specifically for socializing, like a water cooler. And there people share their pets and they share what the plants that they're watering today and so on, just to kind of feel out each individual personal life. Who are these people behind the code? So that's a good way to share who you are and to keep the team dynamics close. So you feel like you're working with people and not just with somebody who's a contributor to some sort of software.
Right. So I think it's really good to know that we are that the social and fellowship activities that would have happened in the physical space are moving to the virtual space, and that we are recognizing the necessity of building rapport and understanding the person behind the screen, and definitely those events and activities that are building rapport will be bringing out person's traits. So with that, what are some of the traits or factors that you think would make a remote work candidate successful in the remote workspace?
I don't want to always be starting, what's happening?
No, I mean, I can jump back
in terms of soft skills and personality, not really.
Right. Mindset is a big part of it. You cannot be the kind of employee who feels that, oh, because I'm working remote, it means my work is easy, or I don't need to do as much, or because my manager not see me. Like if you have that kind of mindset, that's already going to be a problem. And that's exactly what certain kinds of managers fear, right? But it's about personal responsibility, right? It's about being accountable. Once you start working in a remote environment, for it to be successful, you're being managed on your deliverables, which means when you say you're going to do something, you have to do it, and you need to do it by when you've committed to doing it, because that is the only way that the level of trust that is needed is going to be developed, right? If every time you tell your manager, okay, I'm going to get this to you by Thursday, and Thursday comes and your manager doesn't see it, and you show up sometime on Friday near midday with it, and oh, I didn't get a chance to finish because I had to go on the road, and if that's what's happening every single time, because you feel because you're remote, you take advantage of that flexibility, you're eroding the trust, right? And so that kind of personal responsibility and accountability is a huge part of what makes it successful. When your manager knows that you've committed to deliver something on a particular day, it is going to happen. Because at that point, your manager, your leader, whoever your internal customers are, your external customers, they don't need to worry about when you're doing it. It won't matter if you're doing it at 10 p.m. at night, so long as you're getting it in by when you've committed to get it in, right? And as Joedian mentioned, a lot of people are finding themselves much more productive. And if that's the case, then sticking to your commitments should not be a problem, right? And so it's also just about managing your time, managing your work, managing your commitments, not overcommitting. Because at the end of the day, if you can get the work done, remote work works well.
Yeah.
That's my
if I could say, I would say communicate well, communicate often, and communicate when you're supposed to. I have found that some of us try to hide behind the thought, oh, we're shy, or we're introverts, and etc. etc. That does not work, right? We're in this together as a team. You have, especially in a Scrum team or whatever team, it doesn't have to be agile, right? You are committed to delivering something. And a lot of times as a developer, you're committing to doing a bit of the work and someone else may be doing something else, right? So someone else is doing the API, you're going to do the front end. Someone is going to do the back end, you're going to work on the UI or whatever it is. You're committing to working as a team. Someone checking up on you to say, hey, how's that thing going? That person is not micromanaging you. There's no way for someone to read your mind. And especially as we're not in the office, there's no way for someone to walk behind you and see that you're compiling something, right? So, it's important that we communicate. I made a post for LinkedIn about people saying that DSUs make no sense. I don't agree with that. I think in terms of being transparent, it's super, super important that we're saying to people, this is what I'm working on, right? Or this is where I'm at, or my deadline has slipped, or I can't do this now, but I'll do it then. And even if you can't do it then, right? As Bianca mentioned, you say you're going to do it on Thursday, and Thursday comes and you can't do it. Simply say, hey, I got caught up. I can't finish it. Let me give you a status update on Friday. There should be no, let me hope that person doesn't check in on me. Let me not say anything if that person doesn't say anything. That's not how you build trust. That's not how you get more responsibility. That's not how you get promoted. That's not how you become a senior. That's not how you get more contracts. I hire people online too, right? And sometimes my contractors just disappear. And sometimes they turn up a week later, they were in the hospital or some story. And at a point, you stop believing them. You're like, come on, like, see, how many grandmas do you really have, right? So that's not how you build trust. You should communicate. You should communicate when you're supposed to. You should communicate frequently. And you should communicate honestly. That's totally it for me. I really don't care about anything else, because if you're struggling and you communicate it, I can help you to get over that. Just communicate.
All right, I'm going to touch on that point, but because just before you started to speak, that's the point that I wanted to bring up. So as you mentioned, effective communication is really good. It's not only going to help you, it's also going to help the business overall. Because the thing is that, as pointed out, trust is one thing and a great asset to have as an employee. Well, have an employee-employer relationship. Because what will happen, that transparency you create to let your employer team members know where you're at, what are the blockers and so forth. It will help them to basically look at the tasks you need, look at the timeline for the project, and then help all of that help better manage the project, reschedule, and then if you're on a client project, what will happen? The employer or human resource manager, whoever project manager can literally just speak to the client and say, oh, we have some blockers. We're going to try to resolve it or get someone additional to work on it. That helps the business to be trustworthy, and also to be trustworthy towards your skill, your confidentiality, and your openness. But one of the things that we tend to use a strategy, a part of the whole communication between employees and co-workers and so forth, is of course stand-up note, and this is a part of Scrum. So this is a question to any of you panelists. How effective is it for you, Scrum stand-up meetings as well as stand-up notes?
Oshin, I would love to answer that, but I would also, because I do this every day, and I tell you, I have the video recorded. I just need to edit it to put it on LinkedIn. But I would love to hear Rohan's answer to the previous question around the skills, since he has been the one most active in development for the last couple of years.
Okay, all right. Ron, you can go ahead with the previous question.
Yeah. Sorry, this question is on mind. It's a skill.
Yeah, we were talking about skills that make remote work successful.
Right. So being a self-starter, being someone who doesn't need someone behind your back telling you to do this or to work on this, Okay, so for example, in the scope of work that I do, you are asked to complete a task, and you're given the task to do, and you have to go work on it, and you have to report the time you work on it and so on. and nobody's really watching over your back to say, okay, did this person spend 2 hours working on this thing or 3 hours? You have to take the initiative and go out and find the solutions, and if you're having a block, you have to be able to go out and ask questions. You can't wait and say, I'm stuck on this thing, I really can't move on, because you'd be ending up spending 6-7 hours on a task that would probably take 2 hours. So you have to be able to take initiative, and you won't always have answers to all the questions. You won't always know exactly how to work things out. And being able to communicate where you are, the problems you're facing, and sharing your roadblocks, because it's better to say 1 hour down the road, okay, I'm facing this problem, and I Googled it, I went to Stack Overflow, and nothing is telling me what to do. Instead of trying to scratch your head and figuring it out for another 3 hours, generally, if you have teammates, that's the time to reach out. Guys, has anyone ever seen this type of problem before? Because sometimes somebody probably solved that same problem you're having last week, right? And I say, yeah, man, it took me a couple of hours, but it's just a semicolon at the end of the line, and you save another 3 hours. But you have to take initiative too. So one, take the effort to research. Then when you're stuck on an issue or a problem, go out and ask questions, and you shouldn't be waiting on someone to tell you what to do. You have to be always on the front line doing, right? And people like that type of response from developers, because they know they can leave you with a set of tasks to complete, and they know that at the end of the day it will be done. So I think that being a self-starter and taking initiative is an important trait for developers.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump on O'Shane's question, because it's almost like he read my mind. He read my mind today. So this is almost verbatim what I put in my video, if I should even edit it now. I think, I saw people tweeting on Twitter, and some of the people here, and I know them from Twitter, that DSUs make no sense. Why are they getting up for 15 minutes every day to speak about what they're doing? And my opinion is this. If you're using your DSU as a management tool, like just to check up and say, hey, O'Shane's still working on this 3 days later, then it's not going to be effective. It's going to make no sense. If people are not actively engaged in it, and if they're blocked, they're actually not even going to say it. And this means they don't have any psychological safety with the team because they're scared to say that they're blocked, then it's not going to make any sense at all, right? The DSU makes sense when you have people who are open, right? And they're candid, and they feel like they can really say, boy, Jody, I'm blocked on this particular thing. Is there anything you can do? Or they can say, I've been working on this for 6 hours. I need someone to sit with me after DSU. Or they're really not going to pretend that they know the answer and then try to tell you on Fridays. Because I was a developer for 12 years. I even released an Android app last year. I still develop. I know about this thing, right? I've been stuck on a problem before, and pre-Scrum, right? I've been stuck on a problem, and I don't want to ask anybody how to fix it, because I don't want to seem like I'm incompetent, and I'm probably the only female on the team or whatever it is, and I'm stuck with it because until I don't want to be stuck anymore. And I'm getting paid, right? So this is not what you want. This is not what you want to happen. The DSU is an opportunity to be transparent, and transparent means you speak about what your true blockers are, or your true status is. It's not a status update, right? So in terms of notes, we don't take notes. That doesn't happen. So there's nothing like that. But in terms of coming with an open mind to truly say, and all of us, Bianca, Ron, and I stepped on this. Communication is super important. So in terms of it being an avenue to communicate quickly that you need help, or quickly that you're blocked, or quickly that this is where I'm at, it is very, very effective. After DSU, I don't ping anybody else on the channel unless we need to for the rest of the day. So you can't say that 15 minutes is a waste of time, but you should come with a transparent mind, and not with a mindset that this is a management tool. And that's it from me.
Okay. Thank you. Hold on. Bianca, what about your experience with stand-up notes, and how has it been for you? Meeting.
All right. So my area of the business does not specifically use Scrum techniques. Our project or program management office is moving into more agile methodologies. So I personally do not participate in daily stand-ups. With my team, based on the nature of our work, we do a weekly huddle. And so we do meet every single week to go through, I mean, at least half of that discussion. Some of it is updates just because management, there are some things I need to push out to the team and discuss, but at least half of that meeting is similar in the sense that it is for my team to share where are they blocked, where do they need support, whether from me or somebody else on the team. And so the intent is much the same. I'm not interested in having a meeting to get status updates from the team. We have tools for that where they can update what's happening with a particular project so that at any point in time, I can know what's happening. But our weekly huddle, the real purpose is that kind of transparency. It is for them to get the assistance that they need so that I'm not hearing at the end of the month when I now need to report that they've been stuck for the last 3 weeks. Because obviously, I mean, 3 weeks is an eternity, right? So in our case, we do weekly huddles that serve a similar purpose, but they're not intended as a management tool. It really is a working tool.
Thank you, Bianca. Ron, yeah, I think this question will fit in your case because you work remotely for quite a long time. I don't know if you've done like work on freelancer, freelancer, or even Fiverr, or most of your clients is strictly contract based, where someone, as you said, knows you and come directly to you. How do you normally effectively communicate with them? Do you use stand-up notes, and or do you tend to work remotely with these entities?
I've never worked with freelancer or Upwork because every time I try, somebody underbid me.
Underbid, yes.
Same.
$5 per hour for Java development. Yeah, got it.
What I actually use Upwork to hire people, so I finally work with them. But so most of my projects, because I've worked on many different types of teams, I've worked with a variety of project management strategies, right? And depending on the size of the team, depending on how clear the goals are and so on, I've seen how the different type of project management techniques work. I've had projects where the daily stand-up meeting was 25 people, right? And it was like, kill me, right? So I believe in, meetings. The one I'm most comfortable with and one I work with best is we have a small team. Every other day or so, you would meet up with whatever project manager is responsible for whatever you're working on, and for 15 minutes at the end of the day. Because for me, using meetings in the morning just uses up my brain. So whenever I can schedule it, I always schedule it close to the end of the day. So mornings I spend coding and focusing on what needs to be done. In the evening I report what I've done. That works best for me. And if I have the leeway to do that, then I work with an evening meeting. And in that meeting, of course, there are 3 things. You say what you did, were there any blockers, and what are you going to do? And yeah, I find it's useful, but sometimes there are tasks that are known to take long. So I'll be working on a task that takes 15 hours, right? If the project manager knows that, then they say, okay, let's wait 2 days for us to update on that, and then at the end of the 2 days, we'll report on it. So it depends on the size of the team as well, because sometimes there's nobody for me to communicate with because I'm the only person working on our project. So it's really dependent. It's important. It's good for communication, but depending on the situation, it might not be needed daily. And it's also better to communicate in smaller teams where you have shorter meetings.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ron. Funny, you studied it in the evening. That's my approach as well. I generally have a shirt with the writing. I don't do mornings just because of that. But I find it the evening stand-up meetings to be more effective as well. Latifa, you can continue with the questions. You're muted, Latifa.
Yeah, I just realized I'm muted. Okay. So we're going to move on to looking at how we position ourselves to procure and keep a remote work job. So for you guys, how did you position yourself, or what did you do to put yourself in a position to gain a remote work position or job? And what advice do you have for digital professionals who want to know how they can increase their visibility, whether it is locally or globally, to land a remote position?
All right, I'll start first this time. All right, so a bit more of my story. I've been a Drupal developer for a while, since 2006 or so on. Now, I remember we used to have Drupal meetups by Chilitos in Hope Road. And at the time I was working with local clients, and I have a friend of mine, and he said he started working and getting clients online. I think he started Upwork and he's working $30 an hour. I'm like, what? $30 an hour? Like, yeah, mad. And you're working from home? That was just amazing to me. That kind of blew my mind. I'm like, that's actually possible. They think Jamaican coders can actually work. And he said, yeah, he has clients and he's getting consistent work. And I'm like, hey, I thought I was a better developer than he was. He was good, but I mean, I didn't think he was much better than I. So I said, I should be able to do it. So I just went up there, and I remember the first time I applied, I sent out probably 70 or 80 applications. I literally just sprayed it. I mean, I applied to Google, Yahoo, everybody. Right? Once they had a job post out, I applied. But I realized the only people who responded to me were the ones who were working with Drupal. And over the years, I had developed my strength in a specific software framework, which was Drupal. And the people who responded to me are the ones who saw my skills and appreciated them. I didn't get all the jobs, but the ones I did get, they asked me about my Drupal specific work. And that has been consistent throughout the years, is that people want to know what specific thing you are good at. One term I like to use, be a jack of all trades and a master of one. Be known for one specific thing. Because with remote work, especially if you're hiring someone who you've never met, you're hiring them for a purpose, right? If I come and say, okay, I'm a JavaScript developer, I've done Vue, I've done React, I've done Svelte, I've done all these stuff. Yeah, I mean, you're doing so many things, I don't know what I need you for. What are your strengths, So you should go ahead, if you're doing up a resume, title your resume based on whatever job you're looking for, and ensure you have developed the skills in a specific niche in that sector. So for example, if you do JavaScript, don't just say you're React. Say you are, you work on GraphQL and React and give me another front end.
Angular.
I was an Angular developer, so that's all I know.
Okay, so if you're doing Angular, so you do Angular, TypeScript.
Node.js.
Node.js, and these are your specialties, right? It's not Angular and some other thing and Node.js, right? It's you have to say especially what your strong points are, because people are looking for a specific type of person, right? And you have to also commit to becoming that type of person. So if I want to be a Node.js specialist, I'm gonna do every course on Node.js. I'm gonna go on YouTube, watch all the Node.js videos. I'm gonna go on Twitter and subscribe to all the Node.js professionals. And over time, for me with Drupal, I had been working with UE. All UE's sites were Drupal. There were tons of other so over the years, I developed a specialty, right? And it was so happened that that specialty was needed overseas as well, right? So if I were to speak to someone right now who's in I was in second year when I encountered Drupal, and my first job, I can't forget it. It was the summer of third year. My friend wanted his aunt who wanted a website for her daycare center, and she was paying me $40,000 to build that website, right? That was my first Drupal job, because I've been playing around with Drupal on my own, building my own personal sites before, and by the time I could get the real work, I'd have developed the skills necessary to carry it out on my own personal projects. And that's how you do it. You build up the skill in a particular niche. I mean, with technology, everything is changing so fast, and you don't even know exactly what to choose, but you have to choose something. Just follow some major person in the technology space and see what they're saying, and read a lot. And once you can detect trends, choose something. Don't just try and learn everything. You will not learn everything, right? I remember when Angular was hot. No, Angular is no longer hot again. It's React, right? And probably React will be hot next year. But you still have to choose, right? You still have to choose, because even if Angular is no longer hot today, there are thousands of projects still built in Angular, right? And they need support. They need developers. Might not be top framework, but there's work out there. And if you're the best, they'll choose you. So that would be my advice, is to choose a specific area you want to work on, get good at it, and then you go out into the space and start showing yourself and your skills in that area.
Yeah. Sorry, and I just wanted to tack on. So we spent some time before talking about some of the softer skills that are needed to make remote work successful. And particularly if you are looking for employment with a company. So for example, like I work with Victoria Mutual, but if you're looking for that kind of an employment where it means you're likely to have an interview process and so on, what you have to do is make sure that in your interview, you are demonstrating some of the skills that we talked about. They need to know, having interviewed you, that you are someone they can expect the kind of communication that Joedian talked about. They need to see that you are a self-starter, you're self-driven, you take initiative. They need to know that you have delivered on certain things. So you want to make sure you can demonstrate, what have you delivered in the past? What side projects, personal projects have you worked on, to show some initiative? What kind of learning have you gone after? Rohan talked a lot about learning around your technical specialty. You want to demonstrate all of that in an interview, because if the job that you're interviewing for is already designed as a remote job, they are looking for those kinds of skills. If the job was not previously remote and you are hoping to get them to make it remote, then even more so, you have to show that you have the right kind of attitudes and skills that will make you still valuable to them as a remote worker. Because especially if they have not yet kind of gotten to that point where they're expecting remote work, the only way you're going to get there and be able to have that discussion and be able to negotiate for a position to be remote is for them to know that you can in fact function in that way. So paying attention to those skills and making sure to demonstrate them is really important.
Yep. And I just want to like step back to my experience when I used to freelance. So I saw someone mention whether or not Fiverr is a good thing. I hire on Fiverr for creative work. I wouldn't say I would hire on Fiverr for a developer, but I particularly don't. Way back then, we had like Elance, I think that converted to Odesk, and Guru. But that time, my sister was the first one who started working online, doing writing, and I started off writing after I left work until I got some little gigs where I would, install this PHP management system for this person or that person and get paid for the contract. And I think one of my biggest job I ever did was for Tom's Hardware, where I was doing a moderator. So I was getting paid like $500 per 5,000 forum questions that I went and I marked the best answer. I didn't even know someone did that until I got hired. And I was so happy because I finally got that work. Starting out, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Someone mentioned that I think they were asking why it is that the work dried up during COVID. It's because every single company you can think of said, hey, hold the purses. Let's see what's going to happen before we hire. Let's see how big a dip our revenue is going to take before we hire. Hey, we only have 20 laptops. We cannot hire more people. We absolutely do not have enough laptops. So everything dried up because the companies then had to think strategically about how they were going to manage, the little resources that they had and not knowing when more money was going to come in. So when you started out, you were taking a job, someone asked you to install a Drupal website or something like that for $100. And you're like, $100 is not worth my time, but you need to build up those stars on Guru, and you need to build up those stars on those freelancing websites. So you did it, right? But now I won't say it's post-COVID because I'm not sure. I know Remote OK was been building up for a while. And maybe this is the time to let you guys know I do own the domain Remote Jobs Caribbean. It's been going for like 5 or 6 months. So it's before this. I just thought it was a good niche. I do own Remote Jobs Caribbean. You can go and check it out. And I thought it would come to this for sure. So when COVID hit, and I own a couple of other websites too. So yeah, starting out, then it was a lot harder. No one, my Payoneer card got got locked, and your money came and you want the money to spend and you have to wait 3 days, and with all this lot of scamming business, your money get tied up. It was harder. Now we're seeing Remote OK. We're seeing that people are big companies, they're not as scared to hire people offline. We're seeing that companies are more willing to relocate people, right? Before COVID, when you went on LinkedIn and you typed in remote as a location, and you try to search for jobs, you may be found 200. If you go on LinkedIn now and you put in remote, right, it's thousands of jobs that are listed as remote. I can tell you 100% that wasn't the case before. Companies are opening up, they're looking at the bottom line. There was nearshoring, and now they're like, let me get rid of the middleman in the nearshoring thing, and let me find someone who can do the work. I can pay them half the money. I don't even care where they live, right? Because a lot of companies have their VPNs, they have software in place that you can't do certain things on their machines anyway, right? So this is what it's like now. To Bianca's point, you also have to protect your image. To Rohan's point, you also have to find a niche. So go on the LinkedIn. I preach this to everybody every single day. I wouldn't have gotten that job that relocated me and all the cycles that led me to where I'm at now without LinkedIn. I've gotten too many opportunities on it. I can't say it's the place of remote jobs, but I can tell you that jobs are there. Refine your image. Put up your photo there. Put your work out there, right? So that people know that you're doing the work. When Rohan was getting paid 40,000 for his first job, Drupal thing, I was doing Drupal development, and that was my monthly check when I left UA at one of those little things. And I won't even go into much details. Find your niche. And I also still get emails from UK companies. It seems like UK alone is using Drupal or looking for me as a Drupal developer, because I put my resume on a website maybe back in 2007 on Indeed UK or something, right? I'm still getting contacted about Drupal jobs. So find your niche, brand yourself, put yourself out there, right? All you're gonna get is no. You may get someone saying, hey, how much do you charge? And if you want to say $50, maybe you can charge $100 as someone who's in the US or in the UK. But you look at your situation, you say, you know what? If I'm getting $50 per hour, I'm getting paid twice what I would get paid if I went and worked for a small company in Jamaica, and I handle my taxes myself. Pay your taxes, people. So I'm just saying you are able to handle that a little bit better. So put yourself out there, market yourselves, look at alternatives. Go and talk to Rohan. I know he used to lead this group on Facebook. He doesn't pay attention to it anymore. Reach out to people who are there and find opportunities outside of your box. Right? That's it.
I own remote software.
Okay. Thanks.
You own what?
Remote software developer.com. It's down
now. Okay. Caribbean. I wanted to buy JA, but I didn't want to leave the Caribbean out, so.
Hey, how you doing, guys? My name is Ryan, and I got forwarded this link, and I'm really enjoying this conversation that you guys are having. A little insight to me: I've been in tech for over 20 years. I've done the gamut, and I really enjoy the conversation that you guys have. So, are having, and I just wanted to add that piece to it.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Next question. If you have worked in okay, so this is looking back what the physical work was like, comparing it to remote work. So a bit about me when it comes on to background. So I've been in tech for probably over 10 years now. Funnily, I've never done 9 to 5. The moment I got in tech, I was a remote worker all the way up from 2011 all the way up to now. So I definitely do not know what it's like to go into an office. I don't know what it's like to actually be around a large team, because all of us tend to work remotely, regardless of which company I've been working for. But the question deals towards the highlights and the key difference that you notice with working with a team in the physical office versus working remotely, and what are some of the challenges that you face and drawbacks with the difference. You touched on, I think, Joedian, you touched on some of them earlier, but if you can just go back and highlight some. I'm not saying that you should go first there. Anyone of you can go first, but some of the challenges that you think or face with the switch between remote, physical to remote working space.
Well, I can't answer because I've never worked in office.
All right, so Joedian, you and I again.
Yeah, I'll go, and then I think Bianca has some things she can add. I'm sure I'm gonna miss stuff, right? For me, there's a trade-off, and it all depends on the type of person that you are, right? I am also a procrastinator, depending on what the thing is. I'm also I go and watch Netflix, go and cook, go and clean the house versus do what I need to do when, depends on what the task is at hand. If you're a person who is very structured, right? I would say remote work, like Rohan obviously has a very structured life, right? It's fine for you, but I just wanted to point to the trade-off between having that structure and being able to manage your time and money, right? Saying this to say, personally, I'm not sure if I would have the enough, I don't know, like the impetus to go out and work if I was working remotely, like all the time, or freelancing all the way to this stage in my professional career to make the money that I am making as a full-time employee. I'm speaking for me personally. Me personally haven't been burned by back in the day, as I said, when going on Elance, and I'm a Java developer and you're telling me that you want to pay me $5 per hour, right? To work, right? So it is a struggle to get those good contract jobs, and having not been able to get some of those ones for a particular time, I kind of went back or kind of focused on the in-office bit, because for me, it was more security. It's a trade-off for me. In some cases, it's more time, right? But for me, the financial bit was better. In office, especially in Costa Rica, my company, it had so many different nationalities, right? So many different nationalities. It's super amazing. And the experiences I got by working in office with those people, going to those events, etc., within the company and outside of the company, I would not have gotten that working from home as a remote. We can try our best that we can to have remote activities or remote drink party, etc. But if you're someone who's social, and if you're someone who is keen on building some kind of those experience, or even some of those networks, right? Because it's way easier in person, then there's really that big difference between working remotely and working within the office. So for me, that's another big thing. In terms of aspirations for your career development, I found that when and this is me personally, when I was freelancing, a lot of companies or clients, they look at you freelancing or as a remote worker as someone doing the code. There's someone, I don't know the term code monkeys, PC, but people say that, people just code. And if you're someone who is keen on having a career trajectory to advance to a certain level, in many ways, as a remote worker, and as I'm saying, this is my personal experience, I'm not saying one or the other because everyone's circumstance is different, right? You may find that it may be harder, maybe, for you to, reach a manager level, reach a certain amount of level, even reaching a senior level, if that's something that you find important. Because a lot of it is you being able to do the work and do the work within that time frame, versus being in full time. You sometimes have people thinking about your career, having certain aspects of your growth being taken into account. And I find that way different from working for a company and working in the office. I like working from home. I do like it, because I disliked my commute greatly. I dislike my commute and the physical conditions of the snow, etc. I'm a tropical girl. I don't like it. However, I can say in the middle of that, I do miss being able to go to someone's desk and asking their opinion and having conversations in person. So there's definitely that.
Okay. All right. So while I was listening to Joedian, there were basically 4 things that for me jump out in terms of the difference between working at a physical location and working remotely, right? And as she mentioned, they're trade-offs. So it's not that one is better. It really is very dependent on each individual, right? A big one is energy. If you are an extroverted person who gets energy from being around people, from being in a social environment, remote work is going to be very difficult for you if you do not structure your time to create those social interactions, right? The extroverts on my team are struggling with COVID because remote working could be fine, except they can't go and interact with anybody. And so their extroverts are struggling. I am particularly introverted. I hated going to an office and having 30, 40, 50, 100 people around me every day. Hated it. So being at home in the quiet on my own works wonderfully for me. I can pick and choose when I interact socially and expend that energy, right? So energy is a huge one. Joedian mentioned structure, right? When you are working in a physical location, your time is likely to be structured for you, right? You have a start time, you have an end time, there are meetings, you have your boss whatever it is, your time is very structured for you, depending on your job, but generally speaking. When you are working remotely, the level of structure may vary. So for example, in my case, theoretically, I can do most of my work at any time of day. However, I still am expected to be accessible between my standard working hours. So it means I still have flexibility. I can still do other things in my day, but I have to be available to my team, to my boss, during the expected working hours. So if somebody decides, to pick up a phone and call me, they need to be able to reach me. And then you have to structure your work to get it done, which we talked about before. And so it is very much a trade-off. If you are not the kind of person that can structure your time, remote work is going to be a problem because you are going to struggle to deliver the things you need to on time, etc. There is a financial trade-off, and that can come in a variety of ways. A conversation I've had with several of my co-workers. I spend much less money when I'm working remotely because I am saving on gas. I am saving on food. I am saving on laundry. I mean, there's so many things I'm saving on because I'm not coming out of my apartment and having to spend that money. For other people, whereas they may have taken advantage of certain perks, at work, like availability of cheap food at the lunchroom, now they find themselves ordering takeout because they don't like to cook, right? So there can be financial trade-offs, but again, very dependent on you. And the other thing is, which has come up repeatedly, is just the social aspect. So this is now not about your energy and whether you're extroverted or introverted, but you have to be very deliberate about being social because you are not going to have those spontaneous moments, right? And besides just energy and personality, as Joedian is mentioning, it has a lot of value when you start talking about career and relationships and networking. And so you give up a lot of that by moving to remote work. So you now have to be very intentional about doing it and building those relationships. It's not impossible, but it's not going to be the same as when you're in a physical space with people, right? So as Joedian said, not something you can say one is better than the other. It is a very personal thing. Me personally, I am significantly more productive working remotely, like significantly. So much so my productivity has gone up from 2018 to 2019 when I worked half the year remotely. And now 2020, full year remote, and my productivity was even higher, right? So, and that's showing up in my performance assessments. So it's very individual. I have members of my team who are just as productive because they're putting in the effort, but they would be much happier if they were in office. I have other team members, I saw a definite shift when we hit COVID and everybody was sent home. Their productivity started to go up because now they were less distracted in the office and they were better able to kind of focus. So it's a very individual thing which works better for you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bianca. All right. So, Ron, I'm going to throw this one at you because, Bianca and Joedian took on that question. So your tailored question is this. As a remote worker, since the get-go, I'm assuming at start of your career, what are the 3 tips that you personally you do to manage your time to ensure tasks is done and ensuring that the project is basically on track? So for example, for me, every morning nowadays, apparently I get up at 6 o'clock, spend 15 minutes checking social media to do job community stuff, then next 15 minutes look over all of the to-dos for today, then I'll be like, okay, I can reschedule this to another day, I can do this today, let me put this in the stand-up meeting to talk about, and then I structure my day like that to know what I'm going to do for today, tomorrow, as well as sticky notes and so forth. So what are some of the personal techniques you use to ensure that you work effectively remotely?
All right. Being remote means you have a lot more control over your time. Some people are morning persons, some people are evening persons, night person, whatever. Whatever type of person you are, one of the most important things is consistency. Is that these are my work hours. I work from either 9 to 5, 8 to 4. Sometimes for me, there's one point in my career that the best time for me was 4 a.m. to 7, and then 10 to about 3 at something like that, right? Just because of how my life was happening at the time. However, the important thing, it was consistent. And the consistency is what gives you the order that you'd normally get in an office, right? And I mean, things pop up all the time. I mean, I might be home and then somebody say, "Hey, Rohan, let's go to the beach." Just kidding. But I mean, things pop up all the time, and you will not always be able to keep the schedule like every day. But the point is to have a consistent work schedule, and if something pops up, then you can continue working outside of that work schedule to catch back up, but go back to that schedule as much as possible for the rest of the week or the rest of the month. Now, so that's one important thing. The second important thing is to always know what you're doing next. Sometimes, well, at least in the jobs I've worked with, sometimes you get tasks to complete, right? And you get this huge task, and you have to sometimes break it down into subtasks. So you know exactly what you progress from here next, because sometimes after you finish a task, your brain is like so blown away. It's like, okay, all right, I just finished that big thing. What am I going to do next? And if you don't have them like listed out, so I do actual to-do lists sometimes to say, okay, I'm working on this big task. I'm gonna first work on the HTML, push that to get, work on this function, get this function to interact with this function, work on the API, and you break things down into tasks. And if you are into productivity hacks and whatever, you can use like the Pomodoro method, where you work for 25 minutes and then take 5-minute breaks, but you set out that, okay, in this 25 minutes, I'm gonna get this done. And as much as possible, stick to it and keep disciplined in your time, and watch how you have spent your time in the past as well. So take a record, okay, yesterday I spent, because sometimes you might be in front of the computer for 10 hours, but you realize that you only spent 6 hours doing anything productive because you got distracted doing this and distracted doing that. So you have to keep track of the time you spend and how you're spending it, right? And know exactly what tasks are before you and what you need to get done. So having a regular work schedule, having listed tasks, and having something outside of work, because one of the problems with work is that remote work, people always complain that they're afraid of people working remote because they might not work. The opposite is actually true. People end up working more when they're remote, right? So you have to realize that you're not just somebody said a coding monkey or something like that. Have a life outside of coding. For me, sometimes in the morning I get up and I run. I'm in Tobago, so it's a pretty small island, so it's half an hour run to the beach on the north coast, a half hour run to the beach on the south coast, right? So I like to do long distance running, so I run half an hour in the morning to the beach and run back. It's find things to do outside of just what coding or whatever you do, so your mind can free up. Because sometimes I feel like after coding for a while, you feel like acid just pile up in my head. I just need to just blow it out. So I'll go for a walk somewhere, you know. So and some of these walks sometimes help you when you're stuck in a particular task or position, and you get to clear your mind and get back to work, and you're more productive sometimes after you take a break. And get sleep. Get sleep. I'm guilty of this a lot of times, but don't stay up until 2 o'clock working on a problem, you know, because you're gonna spend 8 hours between 10 a.m. and 6 a.m. and then you didn't get it. You wake up in the morning at 10, and in 10 minutes you get it, right? Get your sleep, you know, and set your timeline on your working hours and try to keep to them as much as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone, Bianca and Joedian, do you want to add any single point to what Rohan said, or?
No, I think it covered it.
Yeah, he covered it pretty well. I'm just going to emphasize where he started to get into, which is boundaries. We mentioned it at the top of this discussion. Having boundaries, setting your boundaries, keeping your boundaries is really important. It's very easy for remote work to just kind of take over your life if you let it, because you no longer have that distinction between I'm at work and I'm not at work. And so those boundaries are really, really important. I'm a huge advocate for a holistic work-life balance and mix. So create those boundaries and stick to them.
As you said that, Bianca, I did find something to add. So when I just started working from home, I thought it was going to be temporary. So I did not actively try to make a space for working from home. So I was working from home in the bed, working from home every single place except having a set space. I think definitely having a set space. Even I bought some photos, one fell, and created a little bit of art and bought a chair. It doesn't have to be something fancy, but I think you should create a space. You see, Rohan's space look dedicated to work. Create a space for work, because I think it helps my mindset better. Instead of going back to work in bed, when I leave my bedroom in the morning now, I don't go back until the end of the day. Even if I take a break, I lounge around the couch. If I was to go back to the bed, I honestly feel I would drop in creativity. I'd probably go underneath the sheets and I'm just going to take a short break. I don't know. But create a space that you feel comfortable, have a place to put up your legs, have a comfortable chair. I mean, do what you need to have a space. And I see O'Shane is around the dining table. I'm also around the dining table, but I have a chair that makes me feel like I'm working. So create that kind of space.
Okay. So I'm going to add to that. I'm actually not around my dining table. I'm actually in my room on my computer desk. But this is the advice. If you're working in a room, make sure at least for me, don't put your bed in front of you, because like for me, I'm coded, I'm seeing the bed and I'm like, you know, I can't do this on the bed. And I find myself navigating to the bed each time. So earlier when I was on the call, I went around the dining table because I was trying to avoid the bed. Funny about remote work, so some of my coworkers are on this call, and they always wonder why I didn't have my video on during stand-up meeting. So one day I had my two computers on the Zoom call. One of them had on the video on, but the one that I'm talking to, didn't have the video. So someone pointed out, oh, now I know why you don't want to turn on your video, because you're in your bed doing work. So have that space basically somewhere that won't distract you from work, especially if you want to dedicate your time to completing a task or so forth. So that's my advice when it comes on to Joedian point. All right. moving on to another question, we're going to actually do 2 other questions and then open up the last few minutes for like the audience to ask any question. Well, around remote work. So the 2 questions that I want to ask is one, name some places that individual can go to find remote work opportunities. Jordan, you mentioned LinkedIn, and of course there's freelance sites like Fiverr, Upwork, Freelancer. There's a lot of lancers. But for us Jamaican, especially like for freelancer and so forth, it's probably hard for us to get like those type of job. And then remote work also includes contract and full-time work, because I've been a full-time remote worker for the last 10 years. So to find jobs like that, where would you recommend to go? Any other place apart from the big 5, I guess?
All right. So back in 2016, I wrote this article on Medium. It's called Remote Work in the Caribbean. It's basically encouraging people in the Caribbean to go and do remote work. I'm dropping the link in the chat. So it also lists out a number of places that you can go and find remote work. Strange enough, it's pretty much still evergreen. A lot of the information I put there is still relevant today. So you can go and read that article. But generally, for me, I said I've never had luck on Upwork or any other lancers. I've never gotten a job on any one of those. And I'm not really sad about it, right? Because I realized that there are 2 types of remote jobs. There are what we call gigs, from the gig economy, where you have a task to complete and you look for somebody to finish that task. And that's generally, not strictly speaking, but that's what you primarily find on Upwork. You also find people with long-term opportunities on Upwork as well. But you generally have to be on Upwork for a while for them to pick you up, having a number of reviews and so on. But my approach was that, and I mentioned it earlier, is that I got skilled in a specific niche. And once you're good at something, people will hire you to work in full time, especially if they aren't working on a large project, right? Whether it be a startup or some sort of web agency or just programming shop. So say for example, you're pretty good at, say, React.js, right? To the point where you can hold your own, you can build up a pretty good site. You don't need to go to Upwork. You can start searching job boards. I listed a couple of Remote OK, you have Stack Overflow, you have LinkedIn, and start looking for jobs. As Jamaicans or Caribbean people in general, you will have a lot of opportunities that you wouldn't be able to apply anyway. I mean, just get used to applying, and unless they strictly say no US. Sometimes they say, like they would say US only, but what they really mean is that they want people within this time zone, right? Or they might say North America only, because in their mind, it's North America and Europe, right? So they don't think about below the equator or below Florida, right? And I think everybody below Florida speaks Spanish, right? So the Caribbean sometimes gets forgotten. So when I tell them, oh, hey, I'm from Jamaica or I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, like, what? I never really thought about there, So sometimes some people would just respond to me because they've never really thought about hiring someone from the Caribbean. So just show yourself up, but don't just show yourself up as a plain Jane, right? You have to have whatever they're requesting, whatever expertise they're looking for. Make sure you're showing up with that skill set, and you'll be able to get hired at the rates they'd hire people in North America, right? So I'd advise, that's my route that I would encourage people to go. You could still take the freelancer Upwork one if you want to, but I find it to be a lot more work in my experience to
less pay.
For the money.
So I'd say get good at your skill, get good at what you need to know, and then, and when I say good, I don't mean top of the line, like just good enough that they can build a functional project. You know, build something for yourself, perhaps build something locally, and good enough that you have a functional project. And it's, when you read the job description, you can relate to 90% of the stuff that they're listing. And once you feel comfortable doing that, send out resumes, send out applications to all different companies, and until you get something, you know, and you get some pretty good work. I remember Joel Dean, I think you might know him. Joel, he was one of the best programmers I knew, and I called him. I said, "Hey, Joel, you're not working remote?" I'm like, "If you ever went remote, you'll get a job one time." And we sat down, we talked, and Joel now working for Automatic. Right? I remember he went and he got a job like in no time because he was a pretty good developer. He had a good portfolio on GitHub and so on. All he needed to do was to now show the world that, hey, I know what I'm doing. And one secret I wanted to release is that if you're gonna compete with, especially now, it's getting much harder that everybody's going remote now. People have realized that, hey, it's possible to go remote. So it's getting a bit more competitive. But to stand out from the crowd is to not just be a resume sender. It's to do non-coding things, like write about writing. Writing is a big thing in terms of on your resume as a developer. Because when you write about something, it tends to hint to the person who's hiring that you know enough about this topic to be writing about it, whether or not you do, right? So if you're learning something and you learned something new, write about it. Because guess what? A lot of people out there want to know as well. Go on Stack Overflow or Stack Exchange. I remember I got one of my jobs because the guy went on Stack Overflow and he saw how I was answering questions on Stack Overflow. Note, I started Stack Overflow like a month earlier. But I just went there and I just answered questions. And he said that was very impressive how I answered. So do things that other developers aren't doing. Contribute on Twitter, go on Twitter, talk about coding, talk about projects you're working on, write blog posts, go on YouTube, start a YouTube channel talking about programming, go on TikTok. There are some programmers on TikTok now like taking off, right? Just whatever you're most comfortable to share your expertise in, then use that medium to share outside of just code. Because what ends up happening is that you become known as the JavaScript person or the SQL person, or you become known as that person. So when a problem or a situation comes up, and so, do I know that can do this? Whether you're the most skilled or not, you're the first in mind. And being the first in mind means that they're going to come out and reach out to you. Or if you apply, they're going to say, I'm familiar with this person's work because this person has been talking on social media. This person has been, marketing themselves. And that's one of the downfalls of developers, is that the best developers are the best marketers. They're not necessarily the best coders. Best developers are the people who know how to sell themselves. And you don't have to be an extrovert, because I'm not extroverted. I probably that's why I survive so well in remote work, right? But you just have to know how to market your work, how to stand out from the crowd. And with this COVID thing going on, more and more people are coming into the developer market. But the thing is, they're coming in at the bottom. They're coming in, sending your resumes, going on GitHub, doing the thing. You have to come in from a different angle. Start writing, start talking about what you know. And I say you don't have to be a professional. Just if you today learned about arrays, that hey, you can reverse an array by using the .reverse function. you write a blog post, 3 ways to reverse an array, that reverse, bubble story or something, I don't know, right? And you talk about what you know, and people, you're surprised to know that just that little bit of knowledge that you have seems a whole lot when you talk about it. So that's one major thing I'd recommend.
I just want to add, I have to drop at 8, guys. So you mentioned a very important point in my opinion, Ron. You have to determine whether or not you want remote job as a career or remote gigs, right? I think where we sell ourselves short is that we're bought into the idea that because of the Elance, because of the Fiverr, because of the Guru, that remote work cannot be stable the way you are doing it, Ron. It cannot be stable with a fulfilling career for the long term with a good company, right? If you're going to be bouncing around looking for gigs, for remote gigs, it's going to be hard. You're going to be competing with low ballers, and it's going to be a struggle. I think where we have to look now, especially as more companies are looking to hire full-time employees remotely, is to either find an agency the way Ron mentioned, I think he said you work with an agency, or try to set yourself apart so much that you work with a company full-time. A company, it's still remote work, but there's a lot more security. You know that I've done work as a freelancer where you submitted the job and you never got paid. I have a couple unpaid invoices on those websites from years back. You won't end up in that situation. You may have benefits, etc. Look at which one of these you want. Whether you want a gig where you go and you code all night for 3 days and you submit it and you collect this, etc., because that's going to be difficult. Well, may not be as financially rewarding, that's what I mean. Or you really just want the freedom to advance your career, to create for a top company, to create for even a small company in a niche product, but you want to do that remotely. That's a big, big distinction.
Okay. All right. Funnily, I think like 2020 changed the vision of remote work to more of a gig. So just to clarify, remote work don't necessarily mean it's freelance. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's in the gig industry. As mentioned before, I work well. Last year, I resigned from a remote work job that I've been with for over 5 years. Before that, I was with a company for 4 years remotely. I've done a couple other jobs, part-time jobs remotely. So I've never run in the situation of needing to apply for a job. This goes back to what Ron said, with make yourself known for a particular skill set and so forth. So in Jamaica, I guess I'm the Python guy. But funnily, I'm switching back over to PHP because of Laravel. Laravel is epic. And apart from that, I am the Docker community leader for Jamaica. So I do DevOps here and there. So those are stuff people are coming to me constantly about job posts. Can you come and work for me and so forth? And I tend to push those towards the community. So it goes back to, okay, it can be fulfilling to be in remote. It's all about you positioning yourself, you knowing where to look, and you marketing yourself. So Indeed is a good place to look for remote work, as well as Glassdoor for international clients. And for students, if you want to get started, and I'll mention this since we're reaching to the end of the session, if you're interested in, of course, open source, remote work, there are like a lot of programs out there to get you started, to earn a lot, learn a lot during the summer. So for example, Google Summer of Code is coming up this year, where you can contribute to open source, get paid, and you get paid like between 3,600 and above for the contribution that you've done through Google to open source community. Funnily, we've arranged a session, I think on March 4th, where the program manager at Google is going to give a talk in our session on March 4th. How, you know, Jamaicans can get started, participate in open source, and apply to Google Summer of Code. And I must point out that I along with my former employer, we are both past students of Google Summer of Code alumni, and I was also a mentor for Google Summer of Code. Nevertheless, that's something for, of course, students, university students can, you know, dive into, learn how to work remotely, learn a lot of technology, learn with from a very experienced developers worldwide, and they'll mentor you and give you tips, and you build that international community. Well, I mean, network. So that's something that you can look into. But of course, for professionals, like I said, Indeed or Glassdoor is a good place to start. So I don't think we actually have time for like a lot of questions. So from community base, we can accept, well, I mean, audience, we can accept 3 questions. Hopefully we can keep.
Tifa already put some of the questions in the chat.
Okay, let me check it.
All right, guys, while you're going through that, please feel free to reach out to me, LinkedIn, Twitter, anywhere. I have to drop.
Okay.
I remember you said, yeah.
Could you put your LinkedIn or Twitter in the chat? So
okay, okay, let's put my name and people can search for me. All right, thank you guys. Bye.
All right, bye, Joedian. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Joedian.
Con mucho gusto. Bye.
All right, bye. Latifa, you can go ahead and read out some of the, well, 3 questions.
Oops. Hold on. Okay, so I think some of the questions would have been for Joedian. So we'll have to reach out to her, but I'm going to read all 3, and then Rohan and Bianca can take whichever ones they are able to answer. So the first one is, based on your experiences, what are chances of occupying a high-level position such as product manager, product owner, or chief technical officer while working remotely in the Caribbean? What are some of the successful coping strategies for working long hours without the typical social interaction that's associated with the office? And for project management, do project management certificates such as Scrum Agile give remote candidates any meaningful competitive advantage?
All right, I will jump in. In terms of occupying a high-level position, such as product manager, product owner, CTO, while working remotely in the Caribbean, the chances are there. If you are in the Caribbean and looking for jobs outside the Caribbean, it's definitely possible. That is something that has been happening for years. So it's definitely possible. If you are in the Caribbean and looking for jobs in the Caribbean, I would say now, yes. A year ago, I might have said no. Now, I think having been forced into remote work, the region is now more open to the idea. And what I would suggest, even as we were talking about the previous question about where to look for remote jobs, if you are interested in a full-time employment with a company in the Caribbean, don't mind if their job ad does not say remote accepted or remote okay, simply because a lot of the HR departments have not yet started changing their language. But reach out and ask. Like actually just ask them, are they willing to consider remote candidates? Because you will find that companies, even though their ads are not yet saying remote candidates accepted, they are actually interviewing and hiring remote for full-time employment in positions. So actually ask the question. In terms of coping strategies, so for me personally, I mentioned I happen to be an introvert, and so the long hours without social interaction is not an issue for me, but I do still build in social interaction. There are friends, so my bubble, my physical bubble is tiny because that's just me in my apartment. I live alone. That's my physical bubble. I visit my parents at least once a week. There are friends that I see at least once a week. I have also taken the opportunity. I have done virtual drink ups. I have joined virtual parties. I have hosted a virtual ladies' night with some of my girlfriends, you know, sort of from around the region. There are ways to cope. You know, I have joined webinars and communities, and, you know, there are lots of things happening. And because everybody has been forced online at the same time, there is no shortage of options for how you can still interact with people. And it's just for you to kind of find what works. I am one of those. I've been playing it very safe with COVID. So I am not going out to the bars and the hotels and the restaurants. I may do the occasional, like I ate at a restaurant once, and only because when I looked inside, there were 3 people at a table in the back, and they put me at a table at the front. And so I was like, all right, I'll sit, I'll have a meal, and I'll go. But I'm really not taking on the real world spaces right now with what's happening with our cases here in Jamaica. And then besides that, I have hobbies. Ron talked about find things to do that are not work. So I have many hobbies. So I always have things to do to kind of keep me occupied and keep me distracted. The third question was about project management certificates like Scrum and Agile, and whether they give remote candidates any meaningful competitive advantage. Get them. I can't say whether they give you a competitive advantage, but you're going to be at a disadvantage if you don't have them. If you are looking for roles in project management, in an agile team, have the certifications. Even more so if you have not got significant experience working in that kind of environment. So if you yourself have not been part of agile teams for the last 10 years of your career, it suits you to have the certificate to say that you have learned and studied about the principles and all of the tools and processes that are a part of that methodology. What getting these certificates and certifications also does, we talked before about demonstrating that you are self-driven, you are a self-starter. So showing that you have taken time to learn on your own, to go and get certifications on your own, is also a good signal to employers. So get them. If you have the opportunity, if you have the means, yes.
Okay. So in terms of getting high-level positions in companies, let me start off with Jamaica first. Today, I was talking to a friend of mine. He's a senior developer at NCB, and we asked him, when last have you been to work? I said, in the last 9 months, I went down by the office to pick up a Christmas gift and a monitor, and I haven't seen the office since.
And people are being hired currently for high-level jobs.
Right. So the thing is, the people at top levels are staying home, right? So when they're hiring, they're not hiring to go and sit in the office to go and watch the wall, right? So and as we look into the future, that is, I think the problem before is that people never thought this could work. You know, I've always tried to tell people that I think being remote is more productive than being in office. That's my personal thing for the past couple of years. And I've been trying to push remote for the past couple of years to people, but you know, it was an uphill battle. But now, when people were forced in it, they realize that, hey, you know, this thing actually worked. So from the entry level up to the upper levels, especially, but if you're looking for opportunities locally, you definitely can be a remote senior executive. As it relates to overseas, there's only one sticky thing when it comes down to going up in the ranks overseas, is that you have to go to a company that is probably remote first or strictly distributed. Because with the US has funny regulations when it comes down to hiring. Like, you cannot be hired as an employee in the US if you're working outside of the US. You'll be given the status of contractor, right? Because you're responsible for your own taxes and all that stuff, all that jazz, right? And most companies, if they're gonna put you in a management position, would want you to be working on site or at least be a resident of the US. But there are a growing number of companies that have found a way to work with remote employees. For example, they have Automatic, which produces WordPress. They have hired people all across the world, and people all across the world have been going up in the rankings in these companies, right? Because they have figured out that talent is important wherever it comes from. So I'd say it's getting there now for international companies, that more and more of them are opening up to promoting you from just a contractor who they just pay hourly rate to actually full-time with benefits and health insurance and all of the jazz. So there, it's opening up for those things where you can get promoted to higher levels. So, and the opportunities are there. There are quite a number of Jamaicans, Caribbean people who are working for large companies in the US remotely. So the opportunities are there. And I think that's something that I think at least what's important for me is knowing that people like me who didn't get a first class honors in university, in fact, I barely scratched, I got 2.91 in my GPA, which is not even 3 for the lower second, can still work for big companies and get a good salary, and be competitive in this space if you work in a craft and you hold it, and you can pretty much get to whatever level you want. So people are doing it. People out there are doing stuff, and opportunities are open for developers, whatever level. You just need to be persistent, consistent, and work hard on your skills, and let people know what you do, and opportunities are endless. In terms of coping, I spoke a bit about the coping mechanisms, about finding alternate things to do, having friends outside of work as well. And it's difficult for a lot of people, but whether you go to a club, to church, to wherever you find people, socialize and have a social life outside of work. Certifications, and nothing to project management and so on, but in software development, it depends on what type of software development. If you're in something like JavaScript, certification, by the time they finish the certification, whatever they're certifying you for has already expired. Yep. So like JavaScript, you don't need any certification at all. But no, things like Microsoft has this thing, what's it called?
Azure, AWS.
Right. So those things tend to be a bit more structured, and so if you want to be certified for those things, then fine. But for programming itself, very rare do people get, or do people look for certification. In fact, there's a trend of not even looking for degrees now. So it's more about what you can do and what you have shown in your portfolio or experience to do. I think somebody had mentioned about portfolio. I don't have a portfolio per se. The thing about my type of work is that I work on clients' projects, and some of them are behind passwords, right? So I can't even point to where the work is, right? So I have to do well, I use logos to say, hey, I worked for TripAdvisor, I work for Lowe's. So the idea that you work for large companies, sometimes that works for you. I also try to write about what I've done. I publish my resume. My resume is actually public. If you want to find it, you can go to Frazras, my GitHub repository. Yeah, just search that on GitHub. I have a section here with my resume. So be public with what you know, right? As I mentioned before, and just let people know what you do, so you can stand up. I think that's it.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Bianca and Ron. Latifa, thank you very much for moderating, the first half. Thank you everyone for attending. We are going to wrap up this session. But before we go, I must say we have a couple upcoming events. As mentioned before, the GSOC session with Stephanie Steele, who's the program manager for Google Summer of Code. Another event that we are going to do, which is in the realm of career in tech. Career in Tech is a monthly series, as mentioned before. So at the end of this quarter, we're going to look at nearshoring as the last session of the remote work aspect. After next month event, we're going to actually start to do events, career in tech, by getting tech professionals to come in, like for example, a project manager who might come and just tell you what project management is about, how to get started, things that you should know, and where you should get certified. Someone from security can come, cybersecurity. I just open up those ideals and doors of the job space and let you know how you can get started, get certified, and become like whatever field that is presenting on that day. So this the Career in Tech series is always going to keep on, I think, the fourth Tuesday of every month. And with that said, thank you everyone again for attending. If any audience want to give a last minute comment, you can unmute and make any comment, and we'll wrap up at what, 8:25.
I don't mind making a statement here. I really enjoy this. As I said, I've been in tech for over 20 years. I've worked at a few Fortune 100 companies. I'm at Honeywell, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's an industrial company. And this is very informative. I want to give all the young people here a bit of never give up. Don't be afraid that you've gone through 100 interviews, you didn't get anything. You're going to learn from each interview that you go on. Keep your code together for your portfolio. Keep that together, get organized, and just keep on pushing, keep on pushing. It's a nice field to be in. It's very eccentric in certain areas, especially when you get to low-level development. It's a very eccentric field, but it's very rewarding. And I say this, I love what you guys have done. This is a testament of where Jamaica can go and where you young people can take Jamaica to the next level, and it's absolutely, it's a breath of fresh air. So continue, guys, continue going. I would just recommend for the young people, focus. Rohan, you dropped some beautiful gems, as well as Bianca, you guys dropped a wealth of knowledge, and please continue doing this. And I hope in a few years I can turn on the TV and see you guys get the Order of Distinction from the Prime Minister, because I tell people this: the wealth of a nation is the human capital. And I'm going to repeat this again: the wealth of a nation is the human capital. And I'm part of the capital of Jamaica that immigrated, and eventually I'll come back. But the wealth of Jamaica's nation is you, the young people, the human capital. So do not forget it and continue going forward. It is very impressive, and I'll try to see if I can get some other people that I know on to pass their information. But please continue. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Ryan. Anyone else has any last minute comments?
Sure. Hi, my name is Mike Berger. I'm here in Jamaica at the moment, but I'm actually living in the States and work as a consultant there. This is great. I was wondering what was happening with Jamaica's tech scene, because it's kind of hard to see it in Meetup from elsewhere. Can you guys hear me? So yeah, I think this is really awesome. I actually started a Meetup to talk about some tech topics. And I'll put more out about that at a later time. But I think this is really great, and I certainly want to be involved with this more. And as a consultant, I'm aware of opportunities in the States as well, even though my area of expertise is not coding, it's information security. So I would like to partner with people who are interested in that aspect of technology. Right now, I work with a lot of overseas teams, mainly India, the Ukraine, Poland, and a few other places. And I'm like, well, why not the Caribbean, right? So we'll see how it goes. Thanks again for sharing.
Thank you very much. If possible, could you send your LinkedIn URL or Twitter somewhere that people can reach out to you, since you're interested in being involved and participate in the community, as well as the whole mention of possible partnership.
Yeah, you know what? I will send I guess the meetup that I'm trying to get off the ground. There's nothing there yet, but if you put in there what you're interested in, I know people who specialize in elk, and I mean we already have a Docker presence here, but a few other areas, especially related to information security. Topics around MFA, Office 365 security, Azure, and AWS. So my idea was to periodically have somebody come and present on some of these topics. So if you guys are interested, you can check it out, and you can tell me what you want to know about, and I'll see if I can find somebody to talk about a particular topic if I see enough interest behind it. If that sounds good to you guys.
Okay. Yes. That sounds really great. We're all, well, I think most of us are, if not all, collaboration is a key to success. So yes. And we are at the 8:25 mark. So with that said, everyone, once again, thank you for attending. I hope everyone enjoyed this to the fullest, learned quite a lot, and will take some of these advice, make it fit it in your schedule or practice, and become a more effective remote worker. So with that said, take care everyone. Yes?
One thing, guys, I just realized something. There is I don't know if I pasted this link, but that's not me, Michael Berg. I'll send over a link of me. There's a white guy there. That's not me.
Okay, no problem.
Right. I pasted in the chat.
Okay. All right then. All right then. Thank you everyone, and take care for now. The next meeting, as mentioned, is March 4th. So see you at that one if you're a student, or on I think it's March 20. I don't remember, the fourth Tuesday of March. I don't remember which day is that. So take care and have a great night and the rest of the week.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.